Hi, welcome to our third session of at ACI APEC Online. A good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Last week, we had a very informative session with Amadeus, Narita Airport, and ICM on the end-to-end biometric journey. I can't wait for travels to resume so that we can try out the technology and experience firsthand the efficiency of a contactless process. Today, we shift our attention to the topic spurring the revival of airport commercial revenues. Leading in the conversation is Mr. Martin Moodie from the Moodie Davitt report. Martin is a longtime friend of ACI Asia Pacific, having partnered and co-organized with us the Trinity Forum events. He has recently relocated from the UK and is now also based in Hong Kong. So even though this is a virtual event, we are thrilled to have him in person, appropriately distanced, in the studio with us to lead in the conversation. Martin, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this with us.
So let's get down to business. We've called this session Spurring the Revival of Airport Commercial Revenues. It's a critical subject dedicated to a critical revenue stream. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the resultant disastrous hit to global passenger traffic just about anywhere you care to name has been well documented. And as a natural flow-on from that slump in passenger volume, commercial revenues have been devastated just about everywhere. Now, passenger traffic is, of course, the bloodline of airport retail. And one thing that's been pretty much a given in recent years, the odd regional crisis aside, is the consistent and sustained growth in that traffic. A global pandemic, the ultimate black swan, if you like, means that nothing anymore is a given. Today, via an expert panel of airport and retail representatives, we're going to assess the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on a selection of outstanding yet very diverse airports. But we're also going to be looking forward. How has each airport and retailer responded and adapted to the biggest and most sustained crisis in modern aviation history? And how are they looking ahead and planning for the better days that we all believe lie ahead? How is consumer behavior evolving as a result of the pandemic, and how will it shape in the future? And in turn, how are those changes going to influence how the airport commercial landscape will look in the future? They're big questions with no easy answers. Now, before I introduce our panelists, there's one change to the advertised program, as they say. We were going to be joined by ACI Vice President Economics Patrick Lucas today, but unfortunately Patrick has not been able to make it for reasons beyond his control. However, I did have the chance to speak to him earlier, and I'm just going to briefly highlight some of the key points he was going to make that set, I think, a very useful context for today's discussion.
ACI says that the global passenger decline in 2020 was some 65% compared with the projected baseline. That's a loss, believe it or not, of 6.1 billion passengers. Airports in 2020 made a total loss, cumulative loss of 125 billion US dollars. The revenue of the 95 busiest hubs in the world was wiped out. 46 million jobs supported by aviation lost, and 4.8 million direct aviation jobs lost. As I say, very stark numbers indeed. Now, Patrick and ACI reckon that the international markets won't recover to 2019 passenger volume levels until 2024 or 2025. Domestic's going to be sooner, as we can already see around the world. By the end of 2023, we should be back where we belong. So, fewer passengers, a real need to generate more revenue, greater average spend from those who do travel. And that challenge, and succeeding in that challenge, will be key to the prosperity of airports and their commercial partners going forward. Okay, so it's now time to discuss those issues and questions that I referred to earlier. And I'm delighted to welcome three executives from the world of airport commerce, whom I've known for many years in each case, and who each does an outstanding job for their airport and indeed for our industry. Andrew Gardner is Chief Commercial Property at Australia Pacific Airports Corporation, which runs Melbourne and Launceston airports. He's also Chief of Launceston Airport on the island state of Tasmania. Alby TSANG is General Manager, Retail Portfolio at Airport Authority Hong Kong, my new home airport since last July. And Thabet Musleh is Vice President Operations at Qatar Duty Free, the in-house retail and commercial services operation at Hamad International Airport in Doha, the last international airport I flew through, by the way, before I arrived here in Hong Kong. And as with most of us on this webinar, I suspect it's been far too long between flights. So a lineup of airports of diverse nature, scale, and geography, all of which have had to stare down this prolonged crisis over the past 14 months or so. So gentlemen, welcome. Just to set the scene, if you will, please sum up just how drastically this pandemic hit your respective airports and your retail, of course, and other commercial activities, how you've responded, and how the situation looks today. So a big picture, really, a state of health from your airports. Alby, if I may start with you.
Sure. Hello, Martin. No doubt it has been extremely difficult for us because we only have international flights, but not domestic ones. Our PAX dropped by 88% in 2020. On retail, most of our shops and restaurants have suspended business, and we have waived their rent. Around 20 outlets remain open to provide essential services, including F&B, pharmacy, money exchange, etc., in key locations. Well, I believe the worst is behind us, with vaccination gaining progress in key markets. We expect demand for air travel will gradually pick up towards the end of the year, and our retail business recovery will follow, hopefully.
That's quite encouraging. Andrew, what's the verdict from down under?
I suppose some green shoots, Martin. As you know, the New Zealand has opened up, which is great. But if I look backwards to the past year, we had pre-COVID 38 million passengers a year, of which around 11 million were international, the rest domestic. And unfortunately, all of our business was impacted. And we went from approximately 110,000 customers a day coming through the airport down to as little as 1,000 customers a day, with only repatriation flights taking place internationally. In Victoria, Melbourne, we locked down for 111 days. So it impacted both domestic and international, where we had 0 flights effectively. Only repatriation flights every day, where international customers living in Melbourne were escaping to their own home countries. So with that, all of our international businesses closed, all of our retailers, as did the majority of our domestic retailers. But as with Alby, we approached our board quite early on. In fact, in the month of March, we were locked down from the 21st of March. So early April, we approached our board with a rescue package for our retailers, which effectively said, if they don't trade, they don't pay rent. It was a simple philosophy, and I think the right one given the circumstances. But coming out of the pandemic, we've put into place a number of different contracts with retailers, so negotiating with each one of them. But our objective, Martin, was to see the retailers come back out of the other side. It was to work with them to ensure that we had a cohort of retailers with which we enjoy a really good relationship and want to continue that relationship going forward. So we've invested well over $100 million in terms of rent relief, which we would have been paid, which we certainly didn't. So we've gone from rent to 0, but it's been absolutely the right thing to do under the circumstances. And as I said, with the green shoots starting, we're now probably at about 50% domestic travel again, with, again, 80% of our domestic retailers open, and our international retailers starting to open again because of the New Zealand bubble.
It's been fantastic to see the creation of that air traffic bubble. Speaking as a Kiwi, just to see the emotional scenes being played out across Australian and New Zealand airports in the last few days has been really, really touching. So I've heard from two airports, they're taking a really proactive approach to their retailers and their other commercial partners. Thabet, you've got a very different model, of course, in Doha. Owned by Qatar Airways. That airline has been, I think, absolutely inspirational in the way it's kept flying throughout, this sustained crisis. But tell us from an airport perspective, how it's all looked over the past few months while you've kept flying and how it looks today.
Yeah, I think, look, very early on, it was very clear that this was going to be here for at least I think the early indications were it was going to be here for midterm. And we had to respond in the right way. So, we continue to operate shops and F&B outlets with safety measures. We looked at ways we can improve experience for travelers. We was very unfortunate as a large transit hub. We had lots of people using us to get home. And it was very emotional scenes. And very early on, we had lots of people, for example, flying, landing in Doha, and then rules changing in their home country as they're mid-flight. So I think, as a group, Qatar Airways really, really handled it well. We turned the opportunity very early on, as you know yourself in your visit last year, to look at how can we redevelop the airport, redevelop the retail, redevelop the F&B, use the downtime to get us ready for when the passengers come back. And I think, throughout the industry, everybody's confident that business will come back. And we wanted to take that opportunity very early on to make sure that we were ready for when it does come back. So we really focused on a lot of redevelopment, redeveloped a lot of retail stores, a lot of the F&B, which was a great opportunity to do that. How the situation looks today, well, I'm pleased to say that, every single week, every single month, we're getting better and better and better. Qatar Airways Group has, as you said, has handled the whole pandemic remarkably well. And as a result, it's growing market share globally. We're seeing more and more passengers to more and more key destinations. We're seeing high growth in spend per passenger. And across the last couple of months, as you've seen, Qatar Airways has some very ambitious plans. The summer schedule is expanding to over 140 destinations. We were the first airline in the Middle East to launch the IATA Travel Pass, which I personally used a couple of weeks ago and flew to Istanbul for a few days, which was a fantastic experience. And we're very proud to have operated the first 100% fully vaccinated flight. So, the situation looks a lot better today than it did this time last year.
Yeah, and of course, you've got a very big global event coming up in your country, not so far down the line. I'm talking about the Football World Cup. And you're going hammer and tongs in terms of creating the right facilities for all those passengers that are going to come in from all over the world. So that's still right on track, Thabet, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And I think, it's not just the World Cup. The World Cup is a part of what we're doing it for. We're doing it as part of the airline's expansion growth. We are continuing to redevelop. In fact, one project that has not stopped at all, in fact, the opposite has been fast-tracked, is the airport expansion. So the airport expansion is set to open in August 22, ready for the FIFA World Cup. So we've fast-tracked a lot of projects as well.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, Alby, I'll come back to you. Of course, crises teach us things about ourselves, and we have to adapt. And to use that overused buzzword, we have to pivot in the face of such crisis. What lessons have you learned? And indeed, I'd like to ask you, what are you most proud of that Airport Authority Hong Kong has achieved during this 14 months or so?
Okay. I guess everyone would agree that we have to stay agile and react promptly to changes, whether they are from governments like social distancing measures. I mean, Martin, you have been staying in Hong Kong, the last year or so. You know very well that we have changes like regularly on seating capacity of restaurants, maximum number of people allowed on each table, etc. So being agile is really important. Another lesson I would say is the partnership with our retail partners. We've got a Chinese saying, which in literal translation is, you know who your best mates are when you're in bad times. We certainly appreciate the support of our retail tenants in maintaining essential services for our passengers, even in very low volumes during these challenging times.
I wonder, you know, having organized the Trinity Forum with ACI for so many years, that actually this crisis has brought the stakeholders in the industry closer together than ever before. And hearing what you say, Alby, I think underlines that. Same question to you, Andrew. You've been through a lot of pain down there. Victoria's had it harder than anyone in Australia. Some lessons and some really nice things maybe to have come out that you're proud of.
As an airport, Martin, the lessons that we've learned is we're so reliant on government in making decisions and in decision making. You know, the governments were the ones who closed the borders, and rightly so, it was their call, but it had a massive impact on our business. And without too much consultation, but given the circumstances and given where we're at today as Australia, probably the right thing to do. I mean, we're very, very fortunate now that our business is returning, and I suppose our day-to-day living is returning back to normal, whereas many countries around the world are still suffering quite badly. So we're very fortunate. So one is the relationship with government. Two, nothing lasts forever. You know, we had 12 years of continuous growth of this airport, month on month, year on year, passenger growth. And immediately that ended just overnight. And of course, when you're doing your long-term forecasting, you know, pandemics of this nature don't necessarily come into a conversation. So it was 12 years of continuous growth, which ended. So I guess the other lessons are, I suppose, our dependency upon passengers. You know, our businesses, we still have a property division, and you know, which I'm fortunate enough to look after. And the property division this year will continue to bring in rental to the tune of around $100 million this year, which is not impacted by customers at all. So it's that whole, sorry, my light's just gone off here. It's that whole, you know, aviation, which is about retail, aviation, and car parking, very customer dependent, versus the rest of a business, which is not. So it's just developing that piece of a business into the future, so we have less dependency on passengers. In terms of things that I'm proud of, I guess I'm really proud of my CEO and my board, who I think, given the circumstances, did exactly the right thing in terms of saying, if there's no passengers, we will not charge rent. And we continue those conversations to today. In fact, we've just had a board meeting today where we're looking to continue the rental assistance to our retailers in the next 3 months. So very proud of that, because I know in certain other airports, that was a difficult conversation, whereas our board was, you know, very, very much up to the task.
So Thabet, I'll close this section with you. I've watched over the last 14 months or so. You've been down there on the shop floor. Is it all the time? Your CEO has been down there at the airport, really leading from the front. What's made you most proud from your team, from your operation during these months? And also, as with the other gentlemen, any key learnings?
I think the thing that's made me most proud is, as a group, how we all came together. Be it Qatar Airways, Qatar Duty Free, HIA, and the staff on the ground. They've been absolutely fantastic. If you think, as I said earlier, you know, we're a large transit hub, and, you know, the amount of people that we had that were coming through the airport, crying, emotional, you know, so happy to be on their way home. And the way the teams have handled it has been absolutely immense. And in, you know, as with that as well, I think HIA being the only airport in the Middle East and Asia, and Qatar Airways being the first global airline to achieve Skytrax COVID 5-star ratings is also something that we all as a group are very, very proud of as well. I think the biggest lessons learned from the pandemic is, as Alby was saying, is the need to be agile and flexible, but not just from a commercial point of view, but also with your passengers. And I think we have done that as a group, given the passengers the ability to change their tickets, change their bookings last minute with no changes. That's really, really helped, because situations change in people's personal lives and in countries on a daily basis at the moment. So you have to be adaptable, you have to be agile for the customers. And again, you know, one of the big lessons we've learned is the strong partnerships that we've had and grown and maintained with our brand partners. That's really helped us to innovate and be nimble. And I think everybody had situations, but you know, it goes back to them partnerships that you have with all the fantastic brands. And you know, I'm very proud to say that, you know, the vast majority of them stood by us throughout the pandemic and was really flexible and helped us. And we worked together in a partnership and a collaborative point of way to get us out of the, you know, the deepest part of the pandemic. And like I said, you know, we're now in a much brighter place.
Yeah, and Andrew referred to those green shoots earlier, and although they're not appearing everywhere or to the same level, they certainly are appearing. And on that note, I want to look forward now. Commercial revenues, as Patrick Lucas was telling me earlier on, remain actually not just vital, but perhaps more vital than ever, given the pressure on all airport revenue streams. How can your airports, each of them, best ensure the success and the funding they require from commercial revenues in the future? I suspect your answers will be very different because you're very different airports. I might start with you on that one, Andrew.
I guess from a perspective of, as I said earlier, Martin, the property division, the commercial property division, which property and retail, our industrial properties, we've actually found are growing tremendously at the moment. So we've got a very large land bank. They continue to develop, and we have a lot of interest in our land bank currently. We've got about 35 plots of land ready to go, 1.2 million square meters that, you know, we can rent out and build sheds on. In terms of the actual aviation piece of the business, I guess the success going forward is not dissimilar to the way we've handled it in the past, Martin, which is about, you know, I suppose, respect for the companies we do business with, all of our retailers, aviation partners, car rental partners, where each deal is probably a little bit different, and it's having the flexibility to be able to go out and cut deals which are, I suppose, beneficial to the retailers that we're dealing with. So they're quite, many of them are quite unique. You know, right now we're looking at different deals over particularly the near term, Martin, where, because I guess we as airports have been criticised in the past for charging the quantity of rents that we do. Our argument has always been, well, we almost guarantee you customers. Of course, that argument was taken away. So now what we have is a situation where we're saying, with some retailers, if we look at 0 to 30% of passengers where we were in 2019, we'll take a very small percentage to get you up. It's a very, very small percentage. Then from 30% to 80% and 90% of where we were back in 2019, we'll take an income per passenger. And only looking forward then, once we get to 90% plus, we'll be looking at moving back into minimum annual guarantees, which we've negotiated with our retailers. Some of those benchmarks change somewhat, but by and large have been accepted widely by our retail partners. And yeah, they're comfortable with that. And I think it's just being empathetic, you know, to retailers that are doing it tough. As I said, our objective was to get up the other side, having the majority of our retailers still in place. And I think we're achieving that.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And Alby, I'll come to you. I've been through your airport on so many occasions, one of the great airports of the world and one of the biggest retail footprints in the airport world. And suddenly all that came to pretty much a shuddering halt. How are you going to get it going again from a very small initially passenger base and hopefully rising rapidly in time? Where's the revival going to come from?
Sure. Like you just mentioned, Martin, we have a relatively big portfolio in our airport. One thing is that we will continue to widen our trade mix to ensure that we have something appealing to different types of passengers and avoid unhealthy cannibalization. For instance, our first airside bank offering wealth management services is ready to open upon passenger recovery. Another point I want to share is that as landlords, our job is probably not just to offer physical space and bring in traffic. I guess we should also try to add values for our retail tenants through different ways. In the past, you may remember that we have introduced like free delivery, shopping ambassador, food pre-ordering services, etc. And we have recently soft-launched our own retail loyalty program, offering rewards to our customers for each patronage.
Very good. And you've done a lot with e-commerce, really accelerated your position generally in terms of being a true omni-channel retailer and airport, correct, Alby?
Yes, yes. Our e-commerce platform is dedicated for our retail partners, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, during the pandemic, in fact, it's a great platform for us to keep engaging our customers.
Absolutely. Well, Thabet, I know you haven't slowed down your ambition at all, and you talked about some of the projects earlier on. But, you know, even though you're an in-house retail model, the pressures on you from a P&L view are no different to anybody else on this call. How are you going to ensure that commercial revenues continue to play such a vibrant role as they always have at Hamad International in the past?
I think it's working very closely together as a trinity, or as you've probably seen earlier this year, a quartinity, where we did a launch with a brand, the airport, the retailer, and the airline to really, you know, drive that value message, drive that exclusivity message. And that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to offer value to our customers. We're going to continue to offer a 5-star service, and we're going to continue to offer exclusivity and experiences to these people. And it's working together, as I said, as a trinity to make sure that at check-in, at online, when they're at the counter, they're getting the subtle hints to go into retail and F&B. You know, and you was here a couple of years ago for the Harrods Tea Room launch, and it's one of our most famous now restaurants in the airport. I mean, so much so that we will be hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks now taking that similar 5-star fine dining concept over to the luxury part of the airport, and we'll be opening the world's first ever Emporio Armani cafe and Emporio Armani restaurant in an airport, because that's what people want. And, you know, that's what makes travel retail what it is today. There's a lot of talk about digital, and whilst digital is very, very important, let's not forget what travel retail is. Travel retail is the showcase. That's where brands showcase what they do best. Brands showcase their products, and that is our DNA, and we cannot move away from our DNA. Passengers still want to touch, feel, smell products. Okay, there might not be as many passengers as there was 3 years ago, but our job as retailers is to convert the ones that we've got.
Well, I'm going to pick up on what Thabet just said about passengers want to touch, to feel, to taste, whatever, use their senses, embrace their senses. Alby, do you believe that consumer behavior has changed because of the pandemic? And how do you see it evolving? Because that's where it starts, the consumer.
Well, indeed. I reckon it will be like hybrids for everything going forward. Say we're doing this webinar now. I suspect next year, some of us might prefer doing it in flash, face-to-face, including myself. But some might still choose to join us virtually. I guess it's the same for retail. Inevitably, people are spending more and more time online, whether it's social media or online shops. On the other hand, I believe physical stores remain very relevant. And Martin, don't get me wrong. I mean, for sure, brands would consolidate the outlets, which we have been observing. But but I believe brands would continue to open key stores in strategic locations, because these physical shops, like Thabet said, remain very crucial in helping brands engage the customers and recruit new ones, allowing them to touch, to smell, to try on things.
Yeah. And Andrew, the same thing. Are you seeing, and I suppose we should split the domestic and the international, are you seeing a really quick transformation in passenger behavior? Are they more wary? Are they likely to remain more wary? Where are they going in the future?
It's an interesting question, and I think both Alby and Thabet absolutely similar types of experiences. I think, when you've gone in 111 days hard lockdown as a state and as a city, then the majority of people do their purchases online. So we've seen a massive change from people ordering or moving into shops, even now that we're able to move freely into the city's market, in the city of Melbourne. Certainly it's almost a hangover where people are a little reluctant to go out still, even though we've been very lucky. We've had over 40 days COVID free in Victoria. People are still relatively reluctant to go into the city. And because of these types of meetings, people are no longer needing to go into the offices. They can actually work from home, and that's changed. So I think, we in the downtime have developed our e-commerce platform, and we find that it's called Melbourne Mainways, and it's certainly our, I suppose, like everyone's e-commerce sites. It allows our customers the opportunity to click and collect, etc. But to the points already made, for me, e-commerce is a platform to enable you to get to product. It's not product in itself. So I mean, for retailers, and not that long ago I was one of them, I think the retail proposition is still very, very important. It's all about product. Customers will buy online that product, or they'll decide to buy it in the stores. I think for us at our airport, we're still seeing our customers coming through and picking up products in the stores. And my stores, like the retail stores that we have, need to be top class with great service, with the right product at the right time. And if you have that with, again, looking at our customer profiles may change over time, because we may find that we'll have less customers coming from certain countries and more customers coming from others. And so therefore working with the retailers is just getting that product mix correct, so that when the customers do arrive at the airport, that they have that what they're looking for at the right price on the shelves with the right service. So I'm like the other gents. I think that that look, feel, touch, smell, it's really, really important. And I guess the whole duty-free exclusives, they're still a really good come on for customers. The great prices. The duty-free operators do a great job, as do our suppliers, and keeping our channel very relevant.
Yeah, Eugene Barry at DXB, Dubai International, has a nice acronym around that. It's WACD, what Amazon cannot do. And Amazon can't do those things that Andrew just talked about. And Amazon can't offer duty-free exclusives by definition. So really, really important. You've got really a human laboratory at Hamad International. And because you have traded, operated as an airport and as an airline, and therefore as a retailer right through this crisis at pretty serious levels, you're probably better placed than most to see how consumer behavior has changed along the line. Or has it? What's your views?
Look, I see people are being a little bit more precautious. Masks are important, sanitizing is important, social distances is important. But in terms of shopping and dining behaviors, it's normal. If you can provide your customers with a clean, safe, sanitized environment, they will come shop and eat.
All right. Now tell me, looking forward, can you give us any hints of some of the things that you can tell us about? I know you've got a heck of a pipeline there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all will be revealed very soon, but it's a very, very big year. I think I've shared already that in the next 2 to 3 months, we'll be opening the world's first Emporium Armani restaurant and cafe in an airport, along with other exciting concepts. But it's a very, very big year. And I think hopefully, inshallah, by December 21, HIA will be a very different HIA than what it was in December 2019 from a retail and F&B point of view.
What about HKIA, Alby? I know you've got some really exciting retail plans.
Sure, Martin. We are renovating all our toilets. You know how many we have, which is important to everyone. We've also been transforming our boarding gate areas, introducing e-boarding gates, empowered by biometrics and touchless technologies. Specifically on retail, we have completely renovated public areas of our luxury retail zone, home to over 40 luxury brands, with new floor finishes, ceiling, and new lighting fixtures, etc. And I'm happy to let you know that fitting out works of the 2 duplex shops are close to completion, namely Chanel and Louis Vuitton. Obviously, the latter is new to our airport. We're very excited about it. On F&B, we have converted an airline lounge space into a new 250-seat food court. It will offer affordable fast food in nicely designed environment with great apron views. All in all, we just want to ensure that we are ready when the passengers are back, whether they are the more affluent ones looking for luxury offering or budget travelers simply seeking value meals.
That's really, really exciting news, and I can't wait to see the new Louis Vuitton duplex, and I'm sure Chanel have done their typically extraordinary job as well. So exciting days ahead.
Well, on e-commerce side, we are working on a complete revamp of our online shop. The new version will be ready in Q3 this year, offering a much better user interface. And also, we will also launch new services leveraging our online platform, including a new luxury concierge service. This is an exclusive service for our luxury retail brands, where we help connect passengers with their sales staff. Customers can ask questions, reserve, or even place order before their arrival at the airport.
The Bain & Company report that they did with us recently really said that there'd been a worldwide acceleration of online usage. I think we've seen it, across geographies, across age groups. People as old as me and even older have really embraced it for just their basic day-to-day needs and shopping. Did the pandemic, Alby, really accelerate your thinking, or were you already there anyway in terms of e-commerce?
Well, like Thabet said, actually it accelerated our thinking and even our renovation projects. Yeah.
All right. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, we've got a large pipeline of work coming down the line, Martin. T1 Qantas terminal is about 20 years old. We've just recently bought it back from Qantas, and we're about to start work with Qantas in terms of redefining the retail offering in that terminal. We've got approximately 40 stores there. Almost every one of them will be impacted. Our Terminal 4 is now 5 years old, and looking at the retail proposition and offering in that terminal. And similarly in Terminal 3, the Virgin Terminal, we're looking at changing some of the retailers up there. So we have approximately 150 retail stores, and 65 of the retail stores will be impacted in the next 2 years, improved upon. So a massive pipeline of work, which is great. Again, brings it up to standard, brings it up to scratch internationally. And again, looking at our customers and our customers' needs and the changing customer wants, we're able to, I suppose, bring to our customers the appropriate brands in each one of our terminals. So very exciting times for us going forward. And again, our board will be investing tens of millions of dollars of capital to keep us one of the better airports in Australia.
So very encouraging to hear those three answers and to really know that great projects lie ahead, that you've all maintained your ambition and your investment and your belief. That's really important. Quick closing word from each of you. How does the future of airport food and beverage and retail look? I'll start with you, Thabet.
Look, as I alluded to earlier, a safe and sanitized travel will be the new norm. I think there'll be a greater focus on experience and experiential with a seamless blending of physical and digital. I think it's very important that there's a blending of the both. And I think more and more blended retail and F&B concepts. I think because people want to be relaxed, and if they can be in an environment where they can eat, drink, and shop at the same time, then it's a great return for the airport. And I think the last thing, the most important thing we've probably seen is a huge focus now on sustainability. I think sustainability is becoming key now in everything that we do. And I think that's going to be key going forward as well.
Yeah, indeed, I would echo that opinion. Alby, I'm certain you would as well, but give us a quick snapshot of how the future looks.
Well, I agree with Thabet on everything he said. I just want to add on that we airport operators and the retail partners would need to leverage data and digital technology to grow our business together. And I fully agree the point on sustainability as well. In fact, customers are paying more and more attention on sustainability as well as social responsibility, not just pricing, product quality, etc. This is clearly a very big topic and something we have to embrace. Perhaps, Martin, you can consider organizing a webinar on this topic. I'm sure it will arouse a lot of interest.
Yeah, absolutely, Alby. I couldn't agree more. Well, Andrew, we're almost out of time, so final word over to you down in Melbourne.
I think uncertainty in the next year or so, Martin, just because of the way of the world. Hopefully we get vaccinations and they're successful. But for us as an airport, food and bev going forward, a really important category. And looking at really exciting concepts. We already have a fully functioning brewery on the airport and one of our stomping ground brewery in T3. We're looking at a gin distillery with one of our partners. So we're bringing retail to life at the airport, and we want the airport to be a go-to place that people say it's really cool to hang out there. So we want the airport to be a great experience, and that's what we're working towards.
Airports is a great experience. Well, what a great note to close on. Look, I want to thank our three panelists, Alby TSANG, Andrew Gardner, and Thabet Musleh, who you've heard them for the last hour or so. What fantastic individuals they are. They're so committed. I know them for many years, as I said earlier. I know what they've been through over the past few months. It's been tough being an airport and retail executive. Very, very tough indeed to see that bloodline that is passenger traffic pretty much removed. And they've all stuck with it. And you can hear from what we've said today how their airports are coming through and their retail and food and beverages offer is going to be even better in the future. Alby, Andrew, and Thabet, thanks so much for your time.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
So that was a really fascinating conversation, wasn't it? I found it very somber on the one hand, but also very uplifting. It was really good to hear from those three really committed, intelligent and insightful individuals, how they're looking forward, how their companies are looking forward, and how they indeed do see a brighter future in the days ahead. But as Andrew Gardner well said, we live in a deeply uncertain world. And one thing I suppose that is a given for now is that the passenger recovery is going to be stuttering. It's going to happen faster in some areas than in others. But overall, obviously, the density of footfall in airports is going to be much reduced on what now look like the halcyon days of 2019. So if there are fewer passengers, it's going to be absolutely critical to get those that are traveling spending, and ideally spending more. So it's all about driving footfall. It's all about driving greater penetration. And I think if you're going to achieve those lofty goals, it's going to be also all about collaboration and partnership. We've talked a lot in the past about the spirit of the Trinity partnership between sector stakeholders. Well, we've got to forget the talk now. We've got to walk the walk. The parties in this industry have really got to work together to drive revenues to the greatest extent possible and help airports on the way to recovery, but also to serve the consumer better than ever before, and an evolving consumer in a changing commercial and consumer landscape. So those are really big issues that we've touched on today. I hope we've delivered at least some of the answers. And now I'm going to pass back to Jeannie.
Thank you, Martin. Now, before I let you go, let's have a little chat. Now, of course, we spoke to 3 different airports today, but I'm sure that in your day-to-day, you also interact with many other airports and many others in the industry. What have been some of the sentiments or thoughts that you've picked up from these other airports or other industry stakeholders?
Well, thanks, Jeannie. Well, you're right. I've spent much of my career, in fact, engaging with airports around the world, and spend a lot of my time, most years, on planes or in airports, and it's part of the job I love. Unfortunately, I haven't been in an airport since the day I arrived at Hong Kong International, which was July 28, 2020. So all my dialogue, all my interaction with those airports and their retailers and their food and beverage partners has been virtual. And I pick up a lot of common themes from all the conversations I continue to have with them. And you heard some of those themes echoed today. There is a deep uncertainty out there. The rules of the game keep changing. And that's made it so difficult for each and every one of those airports to plan. And until there is consistency across the world, and I think that's probably a pipe dream in terms of testing, in terms of vaccinations, in terms of how governmental approach to borders opening, closing. It's very difficult for them. However, every airport on the planet knows that the role of commercial revenues has been enhanced. It's been eroded, but it's been enhanced because there are going to be fewer passengers, as we said earlier, and therefore the need to drive greater footfall into the stores or the restaurants and drive up average transaction values is just all critical. And what I liked about the conversation today was to hear about some of the exciting plans that are going on. Alby, for example, at Hong Kong International Airport, he talked about the luxury zone, completely redone, revamped, the magnificent Louis Vuitton shop, duplex store that's taking place there alongside the revamped Chanel duplex. Well, that's going ahead. Louis Vuitton are committed to it. Hong Kong International Airport, Airport Authority Hong Kong are committed to it. That, to me, is a real statement of belief in the future. You heard Thabet at Qatar Duty Free and Hamad International Airport. My goodness me, what an expansion is going on there. And that was the second to last airport I visited, because I stopped there and I walked that vast expanse. Now, obviously, with the FIFA World Cup coming on, there's great pressure to carry on with that expansion. But some of the innovation there is remarkable. You're going to see things at that airport that you haven't seen anywhere else. So, investment like this doesn't just happen unless there's a real sense that traffic is going to come back and business is going to come back. So while everybody is in the dark to a great extent, they believe, and in fact they have to believe, that better days are coming. I certainly believe that. I know you do as an association. And I think the bit of the business that I cover, which is the non-aeronautical side of it, I actually think beyond this very tricky period that we're going through, definitely better days are coming. And that's the take from all around the world. But we've got to be patient.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks, Martin, for that. Now, as most of you know, we partner with the Moodie Davitt Report annually for the Trinity Forum event. And I personally still have very fond memories of the exciting days that we had when we were in Shanghai in 2018 and Doha in 2019. Of course, we had to put a pause to the planned event last year, and we're hopeful. We're still keeping our fingers crossed of what to do this year. But of course, everybody is proceeding with a bit of a cautious optimism. Now, Martin, how has the Moodie Davitt report continued to engage with your partners and the industry during 2020 up through now?
Yeah, great question. Our business, like everybody else's business, was very badly hit last year. And I remember a little earlier than this last year, probably in March, starting to believe that our physical events were very, very uncertain indeed, and in fact unlikely to take place. And we made some calls on that very early. We believed the Trinity Forum wouldn't happen. I know you shared the view. We both clung on to the hope, but they just weren't going to happen. So we had to call off all our physical events last year. We made a decision, quite a bold decision at the time, to create something new. So we created something called the Virtual Travel Retail Expo. We didn't know how to do a virtual expo, but we went out and found out. We knew how to do the conference side of it, but putting together a virtual exhibition was a very ambitious feat indeed. We found a good partner in Filter Tsinghua, and we pulled it off. We had something like 124 exhibitors from around the world, mostly brands, but some airports and a number of retailers and e-commerce players. And it was a big success. It was a success commercially, and I think it was a success intellectually. So you've got to try things. You've got to innovate. Otherwise, I felt we would have just been in defensive mode. Our revenue model was largely reliant on advertising, and boy, is that something that's exposed in bad times like this. So like all the airports we've spoken about, all the retailers, all the brands, it was a matter of being pragmatic, getting your costs down on the one hand, but also being innovative and trying things. And that's what we did last year, and we came through the year pretty strongly. Like you, I can't wait to get back to face-to-face meetings, and I'd love to see the Trinity Forum in some shape take physical form this year. But one thing's for sure, we both still believe in the concept of Trinity, and we'll make it happen just as soon as we can.
Absolutely. So stay tuned. We are being cautious, but we are also optimistic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Martin, Alby, Andrew, and Thabet for the engaging conversation. Thank you especially for your time, Andrew, as it's getting late in the day for you. But Thabet, you still have a long day ahead of you in Doha. And for Martin and Alby, it's time for an afternoon coffee. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. We appreciate your engagement in the chat box. We will stay online in the chat box for a few more minutes in case you have any burning questions. Of course, we can always continue the conversations on Twitter or LinkedIn or email. Next week, we are privileged to have another World Business Partner, Sita, host and moderate on the topic Delivering Confidence to Fly Again. Joining them in the conversation will be colleagues from Changi and Kuwait. Please do join us again. See you next week.